What is up, everybody? DanDanTheFireman here. Today we're going to be doing an opinion piece, but it's going to be based in science. Now, I don't agree with motorcycle riders attacking car drivers because they didn't see them or they didn't perceive them and punching mirrors. It's idiotic, it's useless, and it makes all of us look like a bunch of douchebags. So let's go ahead and take a seat. Let's go ahead and talk about this. And let's figure out kind of why with a little bit of a study that I pulled up. During my live streams, what I do is I typically find motorcycle crash compilations, and then I watch these and I start to see a common pattern here. A lot of motorcycle riders are getting very upset when it comes to car drivers. Car drivers are getting upset and saying they didn't see us. It's like, why? Remember, we always go down this root cause analysis. We're trying to figure out why. And I keep telling everybody, who's at fault? It doesn't really matter. Who's responsible for our own safety? Us. It's at the end of the day, that's what it is. So I've decided to look up some studies on why car drivers do this, and then I started to look up what are attitudes towards motorcycle riders, what are motorcycle riders' attitudes towards car drivers, and lo and behold, there are studies all over the place. So I went and downloaded one, I bought it, and I wanted to read it, and it's very long and I can't share everything here, so I'm gonna go ahead and summarize as best as I possibly can. But if you want to check it out, links in the description. You're probably gonna have to buy it yourself. I can't share it, it's all copyrighted. But the general discussion, the conclusion, the abstract, all that stuff is pretty much up there for you, and I'll be sharing just a tiny bit. So what I have here is the actual study and my notes, and I'm gonna be jumping back and forth between them. Like I said, I cannot share all this stuff. It is copyrighted material, and it's a lot of work. So there was actually 3 studies within this one study. The first study is called Increasing Empathy for Motorcyclists, so they're trying to find ways to do that. The study 2 was investigating the cause of T-junction and change lane collisions between cars and motorcyclists. And the third study was assessing the potential for training interventions using the 3-screen hazard perception test. So 3 screens, basically a screen in front, screen to the side. They were like in a simulation. Okay, so now that we know that, who were inside the study, who was participating, and what they have is novice drivers, experienced drivers, and then dual drivers. So the novice driver had less than 3 years experience, so like brand spanking new, like a teenager basically. Experienced drivers had at least 7 years experience, and dual drivers had at least 7 years experience in both driving and motorcycle riding. Now that's typically what a lot of us are in. I'm part of that dual driver section where I'm able to ride and drive for that long, and I can kind of start, I'll explain a lot of that later, but the experienced drivers, that's, all the people in the late 20s maybe, or I'm not going to count anybody that's, been driving since they're 12. And I don't think that's what they did here. I think it was 7 years since their licensing, but 3 years less for novice drivers since their licensing. So when I go down through here, the 3 studies, the finding the empathy for motorcyclists, it actually turned into car drivers not really caring too much about motorcycle riders. Their assumption is that we're thrill seekers, that we speed all the time, and then it even said in here that they don't even know what speed we're going because they can't even judge that. So that's something to keep in mind. And the second study was really the biggest one I want to focus on, and that's the T-junction. So intersections, a T-junction, whatever it is, any type of intersection. We talk about that in live streams, recognizing patterns, recognizing things, finding these people, finding the hazards. That's what the second study was on, and that's the one I am really going to focus on this video for. Study 3 was the potential training, which is, I'll kind of touch up on that. But the empathy for other motorcyclists, from car drivers to motorcyclists, is not very good. And that's something I want to change with the DDFM crew. I want to change that by utilizing us, the motorcyclists, showing that we are being smart riders, that we are focused on safety, that we're focused on being respectful, and we're focused on basically the good stuff. We're not hooligans here. So if you'd like to become a DDFM crew member, click that join button. It's $2 a month. It really helps out the channel. Or join the Discord. That's absolutely free. We have over 4,000 people in there, and we have a bunch of UK members, which was where this study was taken. So thank you guys over there in the UK. But yeah, please do so. It really does help out, and you get to meet a lot of cool people. The third study is the training. Second study is the T-junction. So what I got from this is that new and novice drivers, they scan frequently. Like, they're kind of paranoid, They're like, oh crap, this is all new to me. They have a very limited view to their scanning ability though. So they're scanning, but they're not necessarily picking out the things that an experienced or a motorcycle rider would pick out because they're brand new. And that's something I talk about when it comes to moving from a parking lot to the road, is that your scanning is very limited. So your situational awareness is actually pretty poor. And it even shows right here, less than 3 years. So it might take a while to do it. So keep watching the after action reviews, and I'll talk more about that later. They also have very impulsive responses. So like they see an opening, boom, they just gun it, or they just go for it. So it's very impulsive, not a lot of thought process going in it. And that plays a huge role when it comes to motorcycle rider safety and even car driver safety, pedestrian safety, doggos running across the street safety, all those things. Experienced drivers, they adopt bad strategies. So over the course of driving, they just got into this habit of nothing's happened. Complacency. They start doing bad things, okay? And that complacency kills. In the fire service, complacency is like a death word. You do never want to be complacent. You always want to have continuing education. You always want to have continuing training of the best principles. You practice, practice, practice. You train, train, train the good strategies, the good things, and you try to remove bad habits. And that's a lesson for anybody in anything. It doesn't have to be motorcycle riding. That's a big issue with experienced drivers. And that plays into the lack of continuing education. No driver, I mean, have you as a driver gone out and got experienced driving classes? Probably not. I haven't. Dual drivers, like I said, are 7 years experience in both driving and motorcycle riding. And what I see in the study is that dual drivers scan very frequently like novice drivers, but they have a very large view to scan because we know both sides. And then we also understand the hazards for cars and motorcycles. And that was one of the biggest problems for novice drivers and experienced drivers, is that they didn't have the understanding of hazards for motorcycles. They have an understanding of hazards for cars. And that's what I really picked up on the study too, where they were trying to figure out the intersection. And what was found is that novice and experienced drivers just don't see motorcyclists. They are looking for cars, and they are staring at that car and then not recognizing it. But I'm gonna read a little bit from here, so that way it's not mostly opinion. I'll go ahead and share my opinion afterwards. So study 2, like I said, was for the T-junction. So drivers in the look training group, so there's 3 different types of training, received explicit instruction on where to look during the video scenarios. So like an after action view, they had those screens up and they were within a car, and then they jumped into a motorcycle perspective. But the car's perspective, they were told where to look. Okay, so imagine a screen and a screen, so they're able to look around. Okay, so there was a second training group called the Perceive Training Group, and drivers in the Perceive Training Group undertook training designed to reduce the processing threshold for subsequent motorcycles in the video scenario. So they started putting out some motorcycles, and they were giving basically hints of where to look, how to look, what to do, and all those different things. So finally, in the third training group, drivers in the appraisal training group viewed hazardous video clips from a motorcyclist perspective. Now, I will go ahead and talk about the conclusion, but that's one thing that you can find on the link. So the conclusion is on the link, and it kind of talks a little bit more about that. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the look training. So basically, they were looking for the hazards. They were told what to look for, how to look for it, kind of like what we do on the after action reviews of looking for patterns. And they actually started doing really well on this and started having more so an appreciation for motorcyclists, because they actually were told how to look for, what to look for, and they were surprised that they never saw any of us. The biggest thing here, though, is the perception training. Okay, so it's one thing to look at something, but it's actually able to perceive. And this is where I want to get into it, because we talk about motion-induced blindness, we talk about inattentional blindness, and this is where it really kicks in. And I'm just going to read it straight from it. So the perceived training intervention was designed to lower drivers' perceptual thresholds for identifying a motorcycle. The rationale behind this is that if a driver looks directly at a motorcycle but does not initially realize what it is, the eyes may move away from the generating awareness of what they looked at. So if they don't know what it is, they look at it and then just kind of look away, like it's a non-issue type thing. We presume 2 levels of processing within a fixation, which are similar to the 2 levels of lexical assess that are suggested in one of the most influential models of eye movements in reading. In this model, when the eye lands on a word, or in our case, a motorcycle, a familiarity check ensues. Completion of this familiarity check leads the oculomotor system to begin planning the next eye movement. If the object or word seems to require more attention, The subsequent plan for the next eye movement can be canceled. However, if the participant does not realize that the word or object needs more attention until it's too late, then the eye movement goes ahead regardless. When the eye lands on a car, a familiarity check will identify it as something worth spending a little more time on, and thus the subsequent eye movement will be delayed while the driver focuses on the car. A motorcycle, however, might not provide enough information to reach the threshold of the familiarity check, and therefore the eye may move without the observer realizing that they were looking at a motorcycle. That's a big section there, and what that literally tells me, if I boil it down, is that car drivers do not see motorcycle riders because it's not familiar to them, where there's not enough motorcycle riders out on the road. And that can also play into not seeing pedestrians. They're not used to seeing pedestrians in certain areas. They're not used to seeing, animals in certain areas. They're not looking for, semi-trucks, even though they're massive. They're not looking for fire trucks, EMS, police, all these things, because they see cars typically only, and that's what they're focused on. And it's a brain thing. It's not necessarily an attitude and behavioral thing. It's a brain thing. So this is why I always give the benefit of the doubt to car drivers in these video scenarios that we see, like on Moto Madness, Moto Lunatics, all those things in my live streams. I give them the benefit of the doubt because it's literally a brain thing and it's a cognitive thing. It's not the behavior. And I want people to get over the behavior part of it. Now, there are some people out there that do target motorcycles, but very rare, very, very, very rare. So in an effort to induce a lower threshold for motorcycles and car drivers, we devised a test that required drivers to hold an image of a motorcycle in their mind before searching for it through an array of road pictures. This might result in the drivers becoming more sensitive to images of motorcycles and thus lead them to realize they are looking at a motorcycle and prioritize it for further processing. So remember, when I tell you guys during my live streams and during my after action reviews, is to burn that image in your brain of like a side profile of a car at an intersection. Because once you burn that image in your head, once you stared at it, once you looked at it for a while, you'll start recognizing it when you're driving or riding. Dual drivers, guys. You'll start recognizing it. And this is also another reason to, instead of playing slug bug with your kid, you ever played that where you see like a VW bug, you hit your brother or sister in the arm and you saw it first, you say slug bug hit them. Anyways, do that with motorcycling. If you're a parent or if you have friends or whoever, tell your friends or tell your kids, hey, look for motorcycles. I'll give you a penny for each one whatever. Did I just date myself? Anyways, give them some money or make it a game for kids to start seeing motorcyclists out on the road, because by the time they get to driving age, it might save a motorcyclist's life. It's not just a fun game. It might save a life, because now you're introducing motorcycles and motorcycle riders to the mind of people so they can burn it into their brain, so that when they go out and drive or ride or whatever, they're going to actually see us. And that's very important. So the appraisal training, this is the intervention attempted to encourage the more cautious responses of dual drivers using the motorcycle-based hazard perception clips from study 2. So they were trying to figure out why and how, and what they did is they were able to utilize the motorcycle hazard perception clips like our after action reviews. They showed that to the car drivers, only the car drivers, and they had a greater appreciation for motorcyclists. So they never understood. They didn't understand. That's the thing. An understanding of somebody is where you start to have some really bad issues. If you don't understand somebody, you don't understand where they're coming from, put your feet in their shoes type of thing, we start having issues. So car drivers, it is incumbent on them to look out for motorcyclists and then kind of get an idea of where we are. But if we are out there trying to force it on somebody by punching mirrors, by yelling at them to put their phone down, by doing stupid shit out on the road, it's not going to work. That's not going to work. We need to find a better way. And what they're saying here is a really good way is to show hazard perception clips. Now I'm going to read just a little bit down here, and then I'm going to go more on a little tangent and soapbox, is that if one spends 20 years looking down at a junction expecting to see an approaching car, so like an intersection, this is likely to create a greater bias towards perceiving a car over a motorcycle than for the novice driver who may have spent less than a year doing the same thing. This raises the possibility that the highly experienced drivers should be the main target audience for any intervention. Certainly, our initial attempts at training drivers to adopt the search, processing, and appraisal strategies of dual drivers, because we do that. We understand. We see the hazard clips because we're part of it. We're watching it here on this channel. We also scan really large. We also know what to look for because we've done both. Okay? I don't think I have to say that anymore. While we have already discussed some of the potential problems with training, it is possible that if we had targeted a more experienced cohort, the effects might have been more positive. So they did this huge, wide study of trying to figure out why. You know, maybe it's a behavioral thing of the car drivers not caring about us. Okay, they found out it's not really the case. They do care. They just, now it's more of a biological thing with the brain and eyes. So then they went into study 2. They figured that out. They went into study 3, which is to find an intervention. So an intervention anywhere is, and especially in EMS, is what we do to prevent it, what we do to mitigate it. So training, they went into that, and they're trying to figure out what's the best training to reduce motorcycle accidents. And it all boiled down to possibly making like a video ad or something on TV showing the motorcyclist perspective of a car crash, and then also showing the car driver's perspective of the same crash, kind of like what a dual driver does. So that's very interesting to me because I only show the motorcyclist perspective, but if I want to target the largest audience, if I want to target an audience that's going to give us the best safety as a motorcycle rider, I should be targeting experienced drivers. I should be targeting that and then showing them motorcycle crash clips. I should be showing them the perspective of a car driver, hopefully from the same crash, but it's not always possible. So I think this is where the crew can really come into play, is that I'm going to do my part, but for you guys, if you have friends that don't ride a motorcycle, showing them motorcycle crash clips with an educational content, kind of like mine, will help them understand that we have a large difficulty when it comes to navigating the road as a motorcyclist. So that right there might actually help save some lives just by sharing and giving more awareness to this, and mainly focusing on experienced drivers, not necessarily novice drivers. That's going to help out though. Let them know to look for motorcyclists because they're already scanning like crazy. Experienced drivers aren't scanning very well. They're scanning a really wide range, but they're not looking for things because they've developed bad habits. So that's a big issue there. But at the end of the day, how I can boil it down for us, how we should be interacting with the cars and people out on the road, is that we should not be reacting in a way that is going to make it harder for us to be safe by smashing mirrors. Now their perceived reaction is, well, screw you, I'm going to sideswipe you. We should not be doing road rage. We should not be policing drivers out on the road. We can voice our concern. We can honk. We can, even rev bomb, whatever it is. But here's the thing, you could elicit a bad response. And at the end of the day, it's not doing anybody any favors. It is not educating anybody. The thing that's going to educate these experienced drivers, especially the experienced drivers, is an understanding of what we have to go through. Now, how do we show that to them? Right now, what I can do is the after action review stuff. I need to target these experienced drivers. I need to let them know this is what we deal with. This is how we have to deal with it. And we have a lot of training we have to do compared to you guys, the experienced or even novice drivers. Now, if you have a better way of doing that, please write in the comments. Let me know what you think is a good option to show experienced drivers. Like, how do we get them to understand us? I would love to hear your opinions, and I'd love to hear them in the Discord. So make sure you click that link in the description and the first comment to get into the Discord. It's absolutely free. A lot of cool people in there, 4,000 plus members in there. And let's figure out a way to make us safer, not only with our own responsibility of better training, situational awareness, getting gear, rescuing other, smart rider, basically a smart rider system. How can we get better? How can we share that? How can we make riders safer outside of what I'm doing? I'd love to know. With that said, I hope you guys ride safe, be safe, and I'll see you around.